Hello viewers, wherever you're watching us from, welcome to another edition of your weekly State of Affairs program, your flagship program here on QTV. I'm your host, Aliou Cissé, and tonight we are joined in the studio by Dr. Ishmael Cissé, the flag bearer 2021 presidential election for Citizens Alliance. Doctor, welcome to the State of Affairs.
Thank you very much.
Also in the studio is my co-host, Sidi. Sidi, welcome to the State of Affairs.
Thank you very much, Aliou.
Well, Citizens Alliance is the 11th registered political party in the country by the Independent Electoral Commission. And according to the founders of this party, the party is founded on the ideals of democracy, civil liberties, social cohesion, and social justice. Doctor, what do you mean here?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. This is unprecedented to have 3 Cisses in one show. It means a lot. What Citizens Alliance, what this means is that the vision of CA is to build a democratic republic. Even though, yes, it's a democratic country, it's a republic, but to enhance that republic and to ensure that we create the right institutions to promote accountability and transparency and the rule of law. So every Gambian can really feel that you are part of the Gambian state and you feel that you are a Gambian. And to generate wealth using our indigenous resources, and the wealth generated is invested back to the Gambian people so they can have access to the most basic things in life, which today they have been deprived of, the majority of our people. Clean water. I never thought that in the 21st century there will be Gambians in this country who will not be having access to clean water. A report just came out recently, the multiple indicator cluster survey, which is telling us that 75% of Gambians, their water is contaminated. They don't have access to clean drinking water. You go to rural Gambia, many Gambians don't have access to healthcare, basic healthcare, quality education, good roads, jobs for our young people. So to create a republic where, I'm not saying we are going to create an equal society, but at least the gap between the haves and the have-nots will be reduced. We increase standards of living, provide jobs for young people, and we build a democratic republic which is stable, peaceful, and prosperous.
What will you identify as some of the reasons for most of these challenges that the country is currently facing?
Well, there are many challenges across multiple levels, very complex. It depends on which challenge. One is healthcare is a challenge in this country today. Many Gambians don't have access to healthcare where they are. Today we should be talking about that, an initiative where we say healthcare where you are. That is, wherever you are, in Kiang, in Quinalam, in Foni, in Bondali, you have access to quality healthcare where you are without going to far away distances to access healthcare. Education is key. We live in a knowledge-based economy, and for us to be able to attract investors, global capital into Gambia to provide employment for our young people, we need to educate our young people, but that is also a challenge. We've not been able to manage ourselves well since independence. Yes, we give credit to the founding fathers, people like Sadada Jawara. They took over the country. It was a very difficult period to build a nation state from zero. You have to remember that Gambia became a state in 1965, an independent state, pitting people with different backgrounds, different histories into one state. Jawara's role was to build that state to make sure that there is stability and to build a democracy and an independent state. But again, after that, we really did not do well in terms of providing the basic amenities to our people. Today, like I said, across multiple sectors, healthcare is a problem, education is a problem. Our young people, I think, just to conclude, there's a failure in planning. We did not plan well. We did not have the foresight to plan the country well. I thought that maybe in 1990s, Sadada Jawara and his team would have sat and looked at projections, demographic projections, industrial projections, and say, look, our population will be 2.5 million in 2021. What kind of country do we want in 2021? How do we plan that? How many will be young people needing jobs? What jobs will they be needing? How are global trends going, which will obviously influence the kind of jobs they'll be needing? How many will need nursery education? How many will need basic and secondary education? How many will need skills training? How many will be pensioners, old age pensioners that will need treatment? How many will be the people with disabilities, vulnerable people? So you plan the country. You don't build a country today for today. You build a country. You start building a country today for the next generation. So when they come, they build for the next generation. That is how it works. But the planning was poor in terms of infrastructure. We did not build roads to house the amount of cars we are having today. That is why today the roads are congested. We did not really decentralize development to rural Gambia. That is why today nothing is in rural Gambia.
Are you saying, Doctor, we had a DIY planning?
Yes, we did pay.
Just to move on from that, you talked about all these things involves money. And frankly, we've seen the economy that we have. We have seen the debt that this country is paying, the debt services and all that. What will be the immediate thing a CA government would do to remedy these problems?
Save, invest. We spend a lot of money in government today. Not only in terms of debt servicing, our debt is unsustainable. 200% of internally generated revenue, 78% of our GDP. We're not borrowing to invest, we are borrowing to consume. You as a family man today, if you borrow money from the banks and you spend that money on frivolous spending in gentes and takas and cars, you'll be taking more debt, which is unsustainable. But if you take that money and invest in educating your children, in their healthcare, you invest in critical sectors, in the energy sector, in agriculture, you make more money. So what we've been doing...
How would you save now? Are you saying we have a big government?
Two things. Yes, exactly.
So now, are you talking about redundancy?
Not only a big government, but also a government that leaks a lot of money. Today, 80% of our budget goes to servicing government. Instead of feeding the people, it feeds the government. In terms of salaries, in terms of cars, in terms of fuel, in terms of travel, workshops, it's unsustainable. We need to have a lean, efficient government that can provide services for the people by using digital technology as well, which is available to us. So government is spending too much. A lot of embassies that had no strategic interest for Gambia that we need to really close and really consider our bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. So we need to save money and invest that money. We need to have a cap for it. How can 80% be spent back to government? The civil service is so bloated. Government is employing over almost close to 45,000 people, half of which is in the security services.
The government is the main employer in this country because we have what I would say a productive base that is handicapped or in fact have never kickstarted. So government seems to be the only source to get jobs for people.
Well, that is the wrong solution.
Government saying we are going to cap the number of people in government and we are going to make a massive redundancy.
What I see a government will do is to promote private sector-led growth, private sector-led investment. So jobs are created. The private sector should create those jobs. I mean, that is a very flimsy excuse to say that because we don't have the productive base, therefore government should employ. But that is counterproductive.
But that's what is happening now. For 65 to date, we have a government in and a government out, a government in, that only solely what they do is to create those jobs in government.
Did it produce any prosperity for this country?
I mean, that's for you. That's why you come into politics.
Exactly. That is why I say that approach, that development model is wrong. We need a paradigm shift from that approach in terms of development model. We need a new paradigm in terms of how we look at the entire governance structure, how we govern, how we provide jobs for our young people, how we provide services for our people. The current status quo did not take us anywhere since 1965, 57 is what I've been able to do for ourselves. We did not create the productive sectors to provide jobs for our young people. We did not do anything. We cannot, so obviously we need to have a paradigm shift and do things. If you've been doing things,
can you give us a paradigm shift, please?
The paradigm shift, obviously, across multiple sectors. First is to grow the economy. I mean, you cannot do anything without money. And for me, borrowing and grants is not sustainable. It's a cycle which leads to dependency, which leads to, obviously, more poverty. We need to try to see how we can create that enabling environment to attract global capital into this country. Countries have done it and they've succeeded. Singapore, Rwanda, you attract global capital to invest in critical sectors and you make money, you just provide employment. What government does is to regulate. So there's a chance here. What should government do? What should the market do? And there should be a chance here. What is the approach? I think the approach is government is to regulate and so the market is regulated. The market is known for generating wealth, is very good at that. But to redistribute that wealth in accordance with the principles of solidarity and fairness, it's not very good at that. It leaves many people in poverty. That's where government comes in to ensure that big companies, FDI, is attracted to the Gambia. Companies come to set up companies, productive base here. I mean, we live in a global capital marketplace. Global production is taking place everywhere. The Chinese can come and build some of their cars in production centers in Sanyang and ship them out to these showrooms in New York to sell them there. But you need to create that environment so that there is stable energy. So when companies come, they know that's electricity, they know what about that. There is a knowledge-based economy that the people have the basic knowledge and basic skills. So when companies come, they don't think about training. There is stability, that the legal frameworks are right to protect your capital and your investment so that you know that there will be no thing like one dictator way and nationalizing your company. So we need to create that environment so we attract this kind of investment.
Doctor, this is something that many will argue might take many years to achieve this thing because we don't have the scales.
When did Rwanda end their genocide? In 1995. Today Rwanda is successful. Why? Because of what they did was to build a knowledge-based economy that attracted foreign direct investments. What Kagame did was that he had people he called the friends of Rwanda, people who advised him. These are big executives in big corporation companies, and they came to invest in Rwanda. Rwanda is made, if Rwanda can make it in 25 years, I think, and it's a long-term planning. I mean, something has been going on for 57 years. You don't expect for us to solve it in 1 or 2 years. It's planning, but I am sure with the right approach, within 5 years, you can start to see changes in this country.
I think I'm baffled here. When you bring Rwanda here, Rwanda is very central in the sense everything is determined by the state. And here what you are talking about is like we are going to allow that democracy, the flow of businesses, private sector-led growth. That is not what is being practiced in Rwanda.
What's happening in Rwanda is not like it's a I mean, people. I know where you are coming from. People have been accusing Kagame of being a dictator. That's at a political level.
He's in charge. He's in charge of everything.
There's a central
command in terms of business, in terms of how the state is run.
You cannot compare the Rwandan system as the communist system where Marxist-Leninists had a central planning system in the former Soviet Union. That is not the case. Institutions are working in Rwanda. There is a private sector-led growth. The market is there and it's open. And it's attracting foreign direct investment into that country. It's not like Kagame is in charge of everything, whereby it's a central planning.
What is happening in Rwanda is this guy is holding the command. It's called the command economy. That's what is actually happening. I mean, we've all seen what is happening.
What is the command economy? What is a command
This guy is in charge of everything.
Not necessarily. It's a command economy. It's when
the state direct development. What is happening? The state is directing development.
But that is private. You see, a private sector cannot thrive in a command economy. In Rwanda, private sector is growing there. I can tell you that they are making mobile phones. They use drones. Private sector is growing in Rwanda. It's not a command economy.
But the state is directing that.
The state regulates, and that's what states should do. It's not directing. It is regulating the market. Because the market, like I said, is known to generate wealth, very good at it to generate wealth. But what the government can do is to regulate to ensure that the market is regulated, that wealth generated by the market is redistributed in the principles of fairness. That is why the state comes into tax to regulate so that environmental laws are respected and implemented, labor laws are respected so our workers are not exploited and paid the value of their labor, so that legal frameworks are right, and you taxation, and then you invest back to the
So what
people.
is the secret there? Can you just tell us the secret?
Leadership.
Okay.
From where?
From the top. That is the secret. Once you get the right leader who understands what they are doing, who has a vision, a plan for how he wants to run the economy and society, the problem is solved. But once you have a leader who doesn't know where he is going to, not even a touchlight, it's just Lambatorek, you get nowhere, just be going round and round. In the wide, you get to nowhere.
You're talking about the model in Rwanda. For example, right now you are the flag bearer of the CA. How will you apply this model if you're elected?
I'm not going to apply any model in Rwanda. Context matter. Therefore, we cannot just replicate the Rwandan model to the Gambian model. This is different geography, different access to different resources, different people. But what we can do is to learn from best practices. We look at different models. We look at the Rwandan model, we look at the Singaporean model, we look at the Swedish model and see what applies here depending on our resources. One of our key resources is the population.
So you think you've not got a model yet? You wait until you get to...
No. What we have to do now is to ensure we invest in our young people, which is our critical asset. This is what can really help us. We have a young population. The median age of this country is 17 years old. It means that it's a young population, very industrious. You have to invest in them. You build critical talent, you build critical skills, and then make sure that the regulatory frameworks are right, and make sure the infrastructure and the legal frameworks are there to attract foreign direct investment into this country, to provide jobs, support economic growth, and then everything will be at least we'll solve most of the social
Doctor,
issues that
So
we have.
are you in any way saying this is something that the current government is not doing?
Oh, I mean, how many jobs have they created since they came to power? Obviously, we have unemployment rate for young people at 41%. Inflation now is at is very high. What new foreign direct investment have come to the Gambia in the past 4 years that is worth its salt?
Are you leaving that the damage actually? Because you and I and everyone else talked about the damage that has happened in the 22 years. So you don't expect this government to come in and just have a magic wonder and just do it.
I never said that it is the government's problem. I never said that. I'm just talking about the problems of this country in general and the solutions.
Let's get to the nitty-gritty of the problems.
I did not say it is Barrow or this. I'm saying that this is where we are.
Okay.
How we got there now, maybe we can discuss. But this is the situation now.
This is the situation, Doctor. We have seen a housing crisis in this country, whether we accept it or not. People, for example, have worked in whether institutions in government, teachers, for example, nurses, other government institutions, where they've worked almost all their life, and they still live in a single room, a room and a parlor.
And renting.
Renting. Seriously, we have not seen a serious government from Sadauda to Yahya Jammeh's government, the APRC, and now we are in a crisis. I've never had anywhere where this government talks about how do we create housing, social housing, for these people.
I think that's
what would a CEO government do? Because it's crisis. We're soon going to be having people sleeping in the streets.
You've been interviewing me for many years. This is the single most important question you've asked me.
Then you did not come in the political fray.
I'm going to preempt here.
Yes.
Right now we are working on our 10-point plan, our 10-point promise to the Gambian people over the next 5 years when when we are in power. So that they can hold us accountable. We are going to say, Gambia, if you elect us, we are going to do X, Y, Z in our first 5 years. And if we don't fulfill it, vote us out. One of the key critical components is housing. We looked at the data and we know the benchmark. We know that up to 2015, Gambia needed to build 50,000 homes to close the housing deficit or the gap that is there. And it is going to increase because we've seen recently that rural-urban migration has increased. 60% of our population live in urban Gambia. And housing is a problem, like you said, people have been working for this country for 40 years, they retire and they are still renting. We have going to make a pledge to the Gambian people in accordance with our 10-point promise that we are going to build almost 100,000 homes within our first 5 years. And those are going to benefit the priority. The police security officers, teachers and nurses, because they are the ones who, and this is low-income housing for them because we believe that currently the real estate sector is unfair to them. I mean, they cannot afford these exorbitant houses that they're building and selling to them. So we are going to ensure that we have a public-private led initiative where we'll build almost 100,000 homes, and those who are going to benefit from this are teachers, nurses, and security officers. In a scheme, the details of the scheme will come later, obviously. In terms of how you get it, how we're going to do the will come. But for now, that is the pledge that we are aware of the crisis. We have a solution to it, and we are working on it.
This will require quite a lot of money. Have we in any way done any costing, and where do you intend to get these funds from? When we drafted the 10-point plan, we tried to answer three critical questions. What is the benchmarking? Let's say, for example, if we say we are going to build 100,000 homes, what are the projections? Why did you say 100,000 and not 50,000? We did that. Now, the financing is also key, and we talked about that. And like I say, a PPP, one of the things that came to mind, we are still yet to finalize the details. One of the things is engage the private sector, particularly Gambians who build homes. Government can come say, you know what, we provide the land, we give you tax breaks, we give you a duty waiver to bring in the goods, but then you build the home, so it could bring the production cost down. When it brings it down, then later on we can see how we can talk to banks to give the workers loans to pay for these houses, and the workers in turn pay. So the scheme will come later, but the financing is, we know government cannot go and build. Government doesn't have that capacity, that financial capacity to build that. It means you need to bring in the private sector to invest in this. But then when the private sector invests, you have to give incentives to cut production costs so that the housing is cheap. I've been in Turkey recently and in Latvia when I was away. I went to visit some industries where they sell ready-made houses, fabricated houses. The house is done. You just lift it up, put it, and they are very nice, powerful houses. And these are things that you could explore so that you cut, in fact, the time of building the houses. We've been building
the same houses since independence, even before independence. Using the same methods, you take the brick, you cozy it, you We need to build smart homes. We need to start changing the way we build homes.
CJ, with smart homes, you talked about the private sector being weak, but as you respond to this question, you're talking about allowing the private sector to take the lead. So
that's why I said currently, in a CA government, we're going to promote private private sector-led growth. That's what I'm saying. I said currently, what is happening there, the private sector is not given, the environment is not created for the private sector to grow and full potential.
Doctor, this is very close to my heart. Simply because I'm a little businessman sitting somewhere, and I know if a government that is serious in terms of private sector-led economy, the growth, some of us will be doing very well. When you talk about private sector and all that, how do you think you're going to do that? This is the question that is very close to my heart.
Because this is something that we have heard from the previous.
Like I said, we see certain conditions has to be right for the private sector to grow. And the private sector, to be honest, there's empirical evidence, even though some will disagree. Obviously, it's an ideological and a policy issue. Some will think that no, government should really play a more central role. Some will say no, the private sector. But for me, I think government has more to do with regulation than engaging in business. That is why today you've seen that our SOEs are very ineffective. The GAMTELs, the NAWEX, because they're not making money. Because the government sometimes is not oriented towards doing business. There's something that is left to the market to do. There is something that is left to government to do. Now, the extent between these two is an ideological question. If you lean more to the left of the ideological spectrum, you have a bigger government has a more role to play. If you lean more towards the right, the market takes the lead. So these are ideological questions. But coming to your question,
is he a center left?
We are center left. We are not very left. That is why we are center left. Obviously,
okay.
We are center left, and we are very flexible in that center left. We are in terms of giving services to the people, in terms of redistribution, in terms of redistribution of wealth. Obviously, we lean to the left in terms of we believe that every Gambian should have an equal opportunity. We think it's unfair for us to have a race whereby my child should start here and your child should start here. So the finishing line, your child obviously will talk first.
I will remember to give you the last question.
So to ensure that that the wealth created is distributed in accordance with the principles of solidarity, so that every Gambian has a good start in life. How you fare depends on talent and hard work and luck. But again, we don't think it is fair for us to have an unequal society where my child has to go to Sibek and Marina, and your child in Jabakunda or in Sabah has to go to a bad public school, and they are all born in the same country. We think that is unfair. My child has to go to the school where he has access to quality education. Your child has to go to a similar school with similar access, so that when he wants to be a pilot, he can be a pilot. When my child wants to be an engineer, he can become an engineer. But today, as it is, the child born in Kombo has more chance to succeed in life than the child born in Fonyi or Nyomi.
You signal something here when you talk about the state enterprises. They are not doing well. Are you thinking of, I see a government would privatize these state institutions?
Well, obviously there are two schools of thought, and we are looking closely at those all two. The first school of thought is privatization. The second school of thought is structural reforms.
Your school of thought, Doctor.
That's why I'm coming.
Yes.
That's why I say we can't have a blanket approach to it. Because we have about 6 SOEs, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Ports Authority, GAMCEL, we have NAWEC, we have Civil Aviation, we have Social Security. So we cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach to all these. We might decide, you know what, GAMTEL, let's leave it to let's sell GAMTEL and GAMTEL privatize it. What about NAWEC? Well, let's see how we can restructure it first. Divide it into 2. Put the water component aside, put electricity aside. In the electricity, what do we do further? Do we privatize everything? No. Privatize generation, but control the grid, for example. To generate the power, privatize it. So you can come as a business, you know what, I want to sell 50 megawatts to the grid. You bring in your solar panels or you bring in your wind farms.
You know that Yahya Jammeh tried something like that?
Why did it fail?
I don't know.
I don't know. But again, I know it is possible because I've studied. I've studied countries. I've studied countries.
Remember, he hired generator number 11 from this guy called Samuel Sarr with his company.
So those are bogus projects. What I'm trying to say is that, in fact, our aim at CA is to ensure that by 2050, we stop using heavy fuel to produce energy in this country. We are going green. We are going green. We are going to use biogas. We are going to use solar. We are going to use wind. We are going to use water. And these are indigenous resources that we have. Why do we have to import a lot of oil into this country and pollute our environment by using these useless generators? We have to go beyond that. Countries have moved beyond that. You are still using generators. So what I'm saying is that all these SOEs, we are going to look at each one of them and do a surgical evaluation and decide now what structural reforms. Some will sell, will privatize, because to be honest, they have to go. Some will do structural reforms, like now maybe we'll divide into two, the water component, but the
so clearly you have not studied this yet. You know, these they are thoughts.
I
won't call it dreaming, but they are thoughts.
As we speak,
yeah.
Because see, these are life-changing policy decisions. You don't rush. You study, you look at other countries, what they've done, you study until really you get your own, you know exactly what to do. You bring in the experts to look at it. But these are to do with medium and the long term. You don't expect for ACA government to come within the next 100 days and do all these structural changes. In the first 100 days, maybe what we'll do is to commission a review. I wish you've read the Ernst & Young audit report of the SOEs. You'll be shocked at how these SOEs are run.
I've read it.
Nawek has been insolvent since they cannot pay. So government is subsidizing. Government is supposed to use
to that report,
to invest
Doctor.
in health and education. They are taking that money and paying Nawek
Doctor,
debt.
going by that report, it says the SOEs are not viable. When you are running your business, you invite an auditor to come and do that business audit for you, and turned and said, you know what, this is not good for purpose. So clearly, you let it go.
No, why? No, first you question why. Why is the business not working? You have to. You don't just say it's not good for, it's not working, so just scrap it. No, why? If my car has a problem, and I bring you as a mechanic, or your engine is gone, it's not working, or your brakes are not working, I cannot say, oh, scrap the car. No,
they've looked at it traditionally.
No, what I say is first, why is it not working? Then they'll tell you, okay, maybe Nawek is employing too many people. Maybe it's the way the governance structures of Nawek. So then you decide now based on that. But you cannot just say because they are not viable. They are not viable because they have not been properly managed. Maybe if they are properly managed, they'll be viable. So you have to understand exactly why are they not viable, and then you find a solution to solve it. But like I said, we are looking at so many different things. We know one thing that is certain, that I can guarantee say that we'll be committed to that. We'll do a structural reform of the SOEs. Which ones will privatize, which ones will really dismember into parts and components, and then see which ones will be run by the private sector and which ones will be owned by the government. We'll decide those details later. We are still working on that. But for now, one thing I know is that the SOEs are not fit. They are not profitable, they are not bringing money, and they are also not fulfilling their true potential. GRA can bring much more money than it is now.
But Doctor, I mean, these are things that we have had in the past. I mean, you know, political aspirants will say all sort of things that, you know, we are going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, but then when they get to Marina Parade, it's a whole different thing. Why do you think Gambians should really trust in what you are saying? That because if you get in there, you know, you will be different.
Because I say it. I'm just joking. One thing I've learned, I'll answer, but just to digress a bit, one thing I've learned as a politician now is that when you transition from one profession, especially as a professor, to politics, you lose your standing as a professor. Yeah. When I was a professor, whatever I say becomes the gospel truth. Oh, it's academic. Yeah. But now as a politician, say, oh, yeah, all are politicians. Exactly. And it's unfortunate, though. But like I said, we have a legacy to protect. And like I said, that is why we are going to be held accountable by the people. So even if I come here and make promises to the government people and I cannot fulfill it, I tell the government, don't vote for us in the next 5 years. Right now, I cannot give you any guarantees as to, all I can say is talk. But like I said, we know what we are doing, and we know what we want to do, and we have a roadmap for the Gambia, both in the short journey, the middle journey, and also in the long journey. We have this roadmap set, and we believe that we can deliver. And like I said, it's politics. If we don't deliver, it's the Gambians that decide. Politicians, what we do is to look for, we are job seekers from the Gambian people. We are job seekers, and they tell us, where's your CV? We give them our manifesto. Come for interviews, we come for political debates. They interview us. That is why every politician was able to go in every street corner and talk to everybody that matters and sell your agenda. Not only
your manifesto out yet?
Of course.
Okay.
We did the launch of our manifesto.
Okay, let's move. Doctor, you talked about, earlier on I asked about housing. And frankly, we are not going to, put these houses on the sky. We have to put them on land. As we speak, 75% on record of the civil cases in courts is land dispute.
In Combo.
Yes.
Yes, but not in rural Gambia. We are going to build this house in rural Gambia.
There is problem of land not only in the combos, just for you to be aware.
But it is more prevalent
you go
in
to
the
the Jaras, you go to the Kians, you go to the Badibus, you go to the Nyomis. People are getting cutlasses looking for each other because of land problem. So 76% on record of our civil cases is land. We need to build these houses. Of course, you need this land to do this. But how will a CA government actually look at the land problems that we have, the land tenureship in this country, the traditional land ownership in this country? It seems it's in crisis, from the Sadauda to the Jammes to the Barrows. We talk about the State Act land ownership of 1992.
We'll reform it.
We don't know what is actually happening.
We'll
so
reform
can CA government help us to understand how do we get this?
We'll reform the land tenure system. We'll build and we'll establish a more powerful, a more empowered land commission, a permanent one, which is equivalent to the powers of the National Human Rights Commission. We'll also do a mapping of all land in this country and be able to know exactly how much land we have, which ones are owned by the state, which ones are owned by the private people, and then we have that. We digitize every land, and then now government will have to decide. All land belong to the state.
But as we speak, we have a land commission, if I'm right.
Yeah.
But it's not empowered, and you can go and
whether
speak
it's
to
a
them.
functional one.
It's not functional. It is not empowered. It is set up as a window dressing, so they are not doing anything. We need to get a proper land commission which is empowered to do the land reforms that we need in this country. But bear in mind that all land belongs to the state, and we need to take action. And also, when it comes to building public goods, like public housing.
As we speak right now, the land of KM, Combo St. Mary, and the West Coast belongs to the state.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
are you going to come with a new law where the whole land in this country belongs to the state? And if so, are you taking the role the alcalos and the chiefs are having? Because they sort of like custodian in the sense they have to give approvals, they have the alcalo transfers, the chief stamps.
They are central in all these issues.
Are you going to
that is why I said we need to reform the land tenure system. Currently, it is not fit for purpose. That is why I said when that happens, that reform happens now. Now, government will have to sit and decide exactly who owns what land and where. But exactly that alcaloship, chieftainship, will have to reform it. It's not fit for purpose. It's not fit for purpose anymore. Yeah, that's what I'm answering to. It's not fit for purpose anymore.
So are you going to remove the alcalos and the chiefs?
We are going to change that rule. They will not be playing that role as they are playing as it is. We need to change the entire land tenure system. How land is acquired, how land is used, and how land is disposed of. It will be totally new as opposed to what is happening now, because it's not fit for purpose. That is what is causing all this conflict.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Come back on that question.
Well, viewers, you're reminded that you're watching State of Affairs here on QTV. I'm your host, Aliou Cisse, and with my co-host, Sidi Cisse, and our guest tonight is Dr. Ishmael Cisse of the Citizens Alliance. We will go with a short commercial break, and when we return, the discussion continues. Hello viewers, welcome back from that short commercial break. Once again, you're watching State of Affairs here on QTV. I am your host, Aliou Cisse, with Sidi Cisse, and our guest tonight is Dr. Ishmael Cisse. Doctor, you've been following developments. I mean, recently we've seen the completion of the TRC public hearings. What have you made so far of these hearings?
Well, it's been very interesting. We've at least known the truth. That is one successful aspect of it. We know what happened. Most of the things were just speculations. We had this, but now we heard from people testifying. So we know the truth now. So that is a plus. Whatever happens with the recommendations later, that's another story. But now at least it has fulfilled one function, which is we know the truth. We know what happened. We know which institutions failed Gambian people. We know who did what and when and how, and we know the perpetrators. We know the victims. That is now known. Now the next aspect now is to let the commission get to work and write their report. When they write their report and they come up with their recommendations, we've always been saying that we strongly urge the government to implement these recommendations to the letter. That is the only way we can reconcile as a country. Currently, as we speak, our country is highly polarized along multiple lines, and which is not good for the country. See, no country can develop if it's not in harmony with itself within. And that is why I see a government, one of the key things that we'll do is to force unite the country. Let every government feel that you are part of the country. Otherwise, no matter how brilliant your ideas are, no matter how brilliant your vision, no matter how brilliant you are as a president, if your country is not united, it's going to be very difficult for you to achieve anything. And
are you confident that the Barrow administration will enforce the...
Yes, just before that, Doctor, I can remember last year you were quoted as saying we have seen people considered to have committed heinous crimes in this country, and some people who bore the greater responsibility are put back into the system. This alone has undermined the integrity of the Truth Commission.
It has the potential to undo that.
Recommendations will be implemented.
Well, we are worried based on what we've seen so far. The Janet Commission made very important recommendations and they were not really implemented. Recently, if you follow the Malagan story about how the COVID organic was brought into this country, and now one official from the Ministry of Finance went to the central bank to withdraw 2.1 million with flouting, obviously, government fiscal regulations to go and pay for this airline. You know that they have not really learned their lessons from the Janet Commission. Janet Commission recommended for 28 people to be reprimanded and or expunged from the civil service. They are still serving in high positions, so they did not implement it. The Faraba Commission also made recommendations to avert what happened in Faraba. They really did not implement. We saw what happened in Sanyang. In fact, specifically, the Faraba Commission cited Sanyang as the next hotspot for communal violence that is related to environmental issues. So this government has a track record of ignoring recommendations of commissions. We will not be surprised if they also ignore and not fully implement the recommendations of the TRRC for political expediency. But I think they'll be making a grave mistake and a very dangerous mistake if they really don't do that, because the victims are still suffering. They need justice. The country needs to heal and reconcile, and the only way that can happen is they fully implement the recommendations of the TRRC.
Doctor, we're all aware, though unfortunately we cannot measure the increase of crime in this country because we don't have a proper data as far as the pollution is concerned in this country. So we can, I won't say it's speculative, but we can say certainly that crime is in the increase. Because you walk down the street, one or two of your neighbors will say, you know, they break into my house, or they break into my car, or somebody just snatch something from my hand. So we can say there is increase of crime. Would a SEA government seriously look into how a police reform that is fit for purpose, where we will see the Gambia Police Force in a more primary role of community policing, democratic policing? Because these are things that are missing, where a crime of such is happening, done by amateurs. If these things are applied, probably we will not. There is 100% certainty that we can prevent crime instead of crime being happening, getting the criminals to court, you know, to prison. You know, we didn't, in the 21st century, we didn't talk about getting the criminal. We are deterring them from committing the crime. What would a SEA government do in terms of serious police reform?
Our top 10 priority list has internal security and also to ensure public safety in the Gambia. And we have to look at two approaches there, the operational aspect and the socio-economic aspect. We've understood that there is an increase in crime. Not only that, a diversification of crime. Crimes that were unheard of before are being committed now in the Gambia. We've understood the problem. I myself undertook and really studied, and I know I've diagnosed what's happening. Because when you have a change in social phenomena, you answer three questions. What is happening? Like you said, there's no empirical evidence because there's no data, but anecdotal evidence suggests that crime has increased. So we know we've established that. Secondly, why? We need to understand the root causes. And the third thing, how do we intervene to stop it? So there are many interwoven factors that are causing this crime. One is the failure of the criminal justice system, the mile to prisons. There was supposed to be prison reforms when this new government came, it failed. Now, if you have a prison whereby it has no rehabilitation or reintegration policy, just put criminals back into society with no prospects of a job, they go back into crime after building criminal networks in Mile 2. Our mental health institutions have failed. Most of the homicide cases you are hearing today, son killing father, co-wife killing, has to do perhaps with mental health issues. You don't just create tanka. You intern people and let them back into society for them to go and kill people. But also, society has changed. Society has evolved. Society has become more complex. Rural-urban migration, like I said, has increased, while international migration has decreased. The sectors that absorb the young people, like I said, 65% are below 25 and 35. They need jobs. The sectors that absorb them are dead. Agriculture is dead because of poor rains and no inputs from government. So young people are supposed to engage in agriculture, come to urban Gambia. The sectors that absorb them is the tourism sector, which is dead because of the COVID-19 and also the going into administration of Thomas Cook. Now all these young people, with nothing to do, frustrated, feeling deprived, in a society there is so much inequality, obviously, and the rising cost of living in this country. And also international migration, which also absorbed young people, has decreased. We had 16,000 Gambians go to Europe in 2016. Now we have 100, 200 that go to Europe. So all these young people who are already there here, you bring all these deportees back from Germany back into society. So we are not engaging the young people positively. So obviously it will lead to a situation with many drugs in society, cheap alcohol which is accessible. So that's a problem. So what we need to do now, the operational one, is the police are not well equipped. So like I said, training is a problem. We have to train police to deal with 24th century crime by equipping them with the right training, the soft component, and the right equipment, the hard component, with vehicles, with I cannot imagine Gambian police don't even have communication gadgets where they can no, I mean they cannot even communicate. Oh. They give them CUGs that have no credit sometimes. Who do you call? So what I'm saying is that they don't even have radio communication. There is no central number you can call to report crime. Community policing happens when people are engaged, the citizenry, and they know exactly what the law says, citizens arrest, and so on and so forth. So, but all this is happening. The police are left to their devices. There are no proper uniforms, no proper shoes, nothing. So obviously, you have to also do the operational aspect by equipping police. Like you said, no data. Data should tell us today that crime rates have increased in Sanyang, but decreased in Nyomi. It helps us in resource mobilization. We know that, okay, now we need more policing in Sanyang. We increase policing under Sanyang and decrease in Nyomi. But that data is not happening. If you look at the ratio of police to citizen today, how much? It's about 100 out of 300, 400. We need to look at that. How many police stations do we have? Why should we build them strategically? You need to also think of, you don't just build police stations anyhow, skelter. All these are determined and influenced by data. That we need more police stations in Kumbo South.
When you talk about data, when police stations actually, police station officers has to go and use internet cafes to print statements.
That is the tragedy. That is why I say we need to equip police with the right technological, we need to build the right technological infrastructure within the police that focuses on police. I may tell you something, the C's, the two C's.
The three C's.
A government, what they do is, you look at crime trends. And know that by 2035, these are the crimes we deal with. Today we are dealing with cybercrime. Our police are not equipped to deal with cybercrime. They're not even equipped to do simple forensics in crime scene. Just look at how people will tamper with the crime scene. Whenever there's a crime, homicide, before the police are there, citizens have gone to tamper with evidence.
Photographs,
and start
doing all sort of things.
Everywhere. So that's a problem. So you need to really be serious, get a serious homicide department with serious forensic equipment and training, serious police officers, well equipped, well trained to do their job, and then there'll be public safety. But today that is not happening in the country, and that is a big tragedy. We need to invest more in
Doc, you're talking about some of the factors responsible for the increase in crimes. You talk about issue of deportation. Will you stop deportation if you're elected?
I will promote for reintegration of our young Gambians in Germany and not to be deported. See, there are two policies here. The German policy is deportation. Our policy will be integration, integrate them back into German society.
But we have Gambia some projects that are meant to reintegrate some of these returnees.
What reintegration? No, I'm saying reintegrate into German society and not into Gambia.
Not Gambia, okay.
Gambia is not ready to receive deportees. Our institutions are not right. Our criminal justice system is weak. Mental health system. We don't have jobs for our young people. We are not ready to accept deportees. We are going to tell our German counterparts that we favor reintegration. The young people in Germany want to work. They want training, give them jobs and training, and when they are training, when they want to come back as citizens, they can. But for now, we cannot accept it.
But you see, most of these deportations that are actually happening now, it comes to whether you call it a blank check or a check. So if you, for example, your government choose to talk about reintegration in the German society, you have a huge loss in the sense that the fundings that probably we are seeing right now from EU and all these partners would stop.
But I see a government will not put itself in a situation where you have to depend on handouts from the EU and accept deportees for you to balance your budget. We will not accept that situation. We'll ensure that we have fiscal discipline and make sure that we diversify our revenue base to make money so that we don't rely on governments to tell us to impose on us our domestic politics just because they give us handouts. We are not going to accept that situation.
Doc, I just have one question on this issue of the security. In your response, you said, you have had, we are now, hearing cases that we are unheard of during previously. Now you tell me, was it because there was job opportunities under Jammeh, or there was that fear of Jammeh that we were hearing some of these cases?
I don't think it's fear. The prison as an institution has failed, and that is fear, deterrent. The prison is supposed to deter crime, but it has not. Now, what I'm saying interdiversity, we've seen armed robbery, for example. And see, people overlook the geopolitics of it. When the Senegalese government had the resolve to stop the rebellion in Casamance, it had a spillover effect in Gambia. Those rebels who were gaining from the war economy in Casamance had to make money, and there is almost a lot of small arms circulating in that region. You've seen that sometimes, and also we have the Senegalese bilateral forces in Fonyi who are stopping the timber trade and also confiscating most of their businesses. Sometimes they just come in and do their stuff and go, but these are all hypothetical suggestions that I think can also increase to crime. But also, like I said, it's not like about Jammeh or on Jammeh. And also, under Jammeh, there is this, see, reputation is key. Reputation that, wow, Jammeh, he kills. For example, that's that reputation, that he doesn't joke. So these criminals, these tourist criminals, don't venture into Gambia. But now with weak institutions, people know that there is impunity. We have a lot of tourist criminals who come from the sub-region to come to Gambia because they know Gambia here, you get away with it, as opposed to the country. So
now we move to the most current issues as far as
yes.
Gambia is concerned, voter registration. I know you've been following developments. You were out of the country, going in and out. What have you found out so far?
I guess you got your voter's card.
Well, my area in Brikama, we are having ours on the 27th of June.
Okay. Come to Bruford, we'll give you one.
So, what's your take on the process so far?
It's Bruford part of Gambia.
What's your take on the process so far?
What we've done is that we deployed volunteers at the CA level to monitor and evaluate different polling stations. We get them logbooks to record time they arrived, what happened, what they saw. We are gathering that evidence. But so far, based on what we are seeing on social media and reports, it's going very slowly. There has been glitches here and there. It seems like preparations were really not up to standard. There are reports of young people, not young people, but people who are not eligible by age registering, minors. The issue of foreigners, I don't want to get into it because sometimes you don't know who is a foreigner and who's not a foreigner. Gambia now is a diverse country. We have people who live in this country who are non-Gambian before, now they are Gambian. So that's a bit tricky. We don't want to get into that. But right now, our approach is we are observing the situation very closely. We are collecting data. Now we'll let the process take its course. We don't want to do anything that will undermine the integrity of the process because it will really have an impact on the elections as well. It could come back to haunt us, and we don't want that. So we are observing anything that we saw at the end of the exercise that we think did not follow due process. We'll take it. We'll use the legal means to challenge it at the courts.
I mean, Doctor, we are aware when this government came in, they talked about political reform, electoral reform, and unfortunately, those reforms actually have not taken place. If they have, it's not visible that we can see. In that, this attestation, we know in the Jammeh electoral process and all those attestation is there, and amendment had happened in 2015 where not only the Alcalo and the 5 people, but only the Alcalo, the chief, and we've seen the Banjul mayoress doing attestation. As a CA, your political party, any contentions on some of those issues? Of course.
In fact, I had a press conference, even though QTV does not come to our press conference. I don't know why. But we had a press conference 2 months ago. And
Were they invited?
Of course, yes. And I raised this issue, that attestation is going to cause problems in the registration. I said, and I quote, I don't know exactly what we should do because it's problematic, because if we take it out of the equation, a lot of people disenfranchised because they don't have passports and ID cards and birth certificates. We need to deal with it and find a solution to it. But nobody
at the IPC inter-party committee, these are issues that people could have thrashed out. The attestation issue.
I think it was discussed at one of the discussions, and I think some political parties thought it should be removed, but in the it should stay.
Majority said it should stay.
Exactly.
Okay, so why?
So obviously, because you know why many Gambians don't really hold national documents. Now, if you really remove the attestation completely without reforming it to make it more secure and more safe, we are going to disenfranchise a lot of Gambians. You know how to get ID card in this country is expensive, and also the bureaucracy involved is daunting. Many Gambians don't hold passports until you travel. How many of them have birth certificates? So there was a problem that I raised, that there was a problem. Now the attestation is happening, and for us, what is happening now, on the reports we are getting, is not looking good. It could undermine the integrity You see, the electoral process is not only on election day. This is part of the electoral process.
It's a process.
It's an entire process. So a mishap
Can affect
in any part of at any stage of the process can go to impact the...
Others will say incumbents can abuse that process. Are you in agreement with that?
Well, I've said it before that obviously incumbents, especially in post-colonial Africa, have this tenacity to really interfere with the electoral process in their favor. And this government is no exception. We've seen it everywhere. That is what they are good at doing, except only a CA government will not engage in such activities. But again, this is African politics. But we are watching, we are keenly watching, we are observing, we are being vigilant. And if we really have the final report from our volunteers and we see any form of malpractice that we think is against the Constitution, we are going to take the matter, we are going to take the legal highway to resolve it.
But we saw at some point the CSO's coalition on elections, went out to find out what has been happening. And then according to their report, it appears some of these political parties didn't actually prepare their agents to really understand how this operates. And somehow they were interfering with the process by even trying to intimidate some of the registrants.
Yes, I read the primary report of the coalition of CSOs, and I read that part of it where they say that the political party agents were not fully prepared. I think that is something that the political party now should learn from, including CA. That it's important that we prepare our agents and give them the requisite training before we deploy them. And I think that was a good report. It's a feedback for us as a party. It should be a feedback for every party that we should really train our people. So when they go, you don't just go to observe to sit and watch. You go to observe to serve a particular function. But you should know exactly what that function is, and you can only know that function if you are given the right training. We should learn from that. But again, like they are right that political parties should not interfere by holding people who are foreigner, you are not a foreigner.
Oh, yeah,
that is not their job. And that can cause...
And it's really sad that, you can just look at Dr. Sise and because of his color, and you say Sise is from Guinea.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate, and it reminds me of events in Rwanda just before the genocide.
Okay, Doctor, just before we conclude, I know we don't have much time. You talk about CA being center-left, more on the socialist approach. I know we have one political party here that proudly call themselves a socialist party, that is PDOIs. These two.
We are very different.
Okay, what is the difference?
Ideologically, we are different. We are center-left.
Okay.
If I understand, DOI is more of they are more farther to the left than us. So ideologically, we are different. When it comes to policy, in terms of
they are more left, and you are center.
We are center, and we are in the center, but we lean more to the left than to the right. Okay. So I don't know if you understand my point.
DOI?
They are well, they are more to the left. They are more to the left. So ideologically, we are different. Okay. Policy-wise, there are certain values that we share, certain few policies, but in general, there are many policies where we differ, especially when it comes to how we run the economy. And I think that would really come out nicely in a political debate. Then that thing, I'm looking forward to that, and that will be really nice, whereby we kind of lay out how we want to run the economy, and then now you'll be able to see these differences that I'm talking about. Also, internally, how we run our parties are also very different. Okay. Many people think that DOI and CA are cousins, but I don't see that relationship, apart from the fact that, yes, maybe we have the tendency to speak big English language, maybe that is why.
But Doc, quickly, just as we speak, we have over almost 18 political parties, registered political parties in the country, and so many independent candidates are coming up. Is there any plan of forming any coalition with any political party? Because it's going to be very tense.
I'll tell you something. I did not join politics just to get to government. I joined politics to get to government to make change. I will not join any coalition if the coalition is to uproot one head of state and replace with another head of state, but the way of running government still remains the same, and we don't see meaningful change in society. Like I said, if we have a serious team coalition, where the framework is right, is genuine and is right, and the agenda is genuine and is to move the country, we'll consider those discussions. But for now, we're not going to join a coalition just because you have to be in government. If that is the case, I'd rather quit politics than join a coalition just because you have to be in government. That is not why I joined politics. If I join a coalition, we have to see meaningful change. We have to see the reforms that we promised. We have to see a shift. We have to see that young people have jobs. We have to see that social services are enhanced. We need to move someplace. But just to change the coalition, you bring equality. People have said there is only equality so you can remove Barrow. For us, like I said, removing Barrow is the easiest bit. Replacing Barrow with someone who can move this country, that we should focus on. That is the most difficult bit. And for me, joining equality just because I have to be in government, that is it. I'm not interested in equality.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cisse. Well, viewers, with that we come to the end of this episode. I'm your host, Aliou Cisse. Our guest tonight was Dr. Ishmael Cisse, the leader of the Citizens Alliance, political science lecturer turned a politician now. And my co-host, Sidi Cisse. Thank you so much for watching this program. Do join the repeat on Sunday at 10 a.m. Until then, bye-bye.